The truth is, even after I inherited the house, I never thought I'd come back to it.
Fortunately for me, the pandemic has not interfered with my lifelong hobby of video games. I finally got around to playing What Remains of Edith Finch, a game that received high praise for its short but engrossing Lovecraftian-esque narrative. What I experienced was a surprisingly insightful exploration of humanity's relationship with death. I also recently read Hospice and Palliative Medicine Dr. B.J. Miller's opinion piece in the New York Times entitled, What is Death? I was struck by the parallels between his piece and What Remains of Edith Finch. In his mid-pandemic essay, Dr. Miller urges us to take the opportunity to reflect on the titular question of what is death, and further suggests our answer might be reflected in how we choose to live. Dr. Miller asserts that we really have only two choices: to share life with death, or to be robbed by death. What Remains of Edith Finch doubles down on this sentiment by turning tragedy on its head and daring us to find beauty in every story, no matter how it ends. What Remains of Edith Finch is a walking simulator style game that centers on a young woman named Edith Finch who returns to her childhood home following the death of her mother. Now the last member of her family, Edith is searching for an explanation for the infamous Finch family curse. For reasons unknown, the tragedy of untimely death has stalked the Finch family for countless generations. Over the course of the game, you explore the rooms of Edith's deceased relatives in order to make sense of her family's misfortune. Browsing journals and photographs of Edith's deceased relatives momentarily transports you to the moment before each person's death, allowing you to temporarily see the world through their eyes. While this experience gives you some information about the circumstances of each family member's death, many questions remain unanswered. A content warning here: this game includes scenes and topics that cover infant death, the death of children, and death by suicide. What I found more captivating than the mystery of the curse was the variety of ways the family copes with terrible loss. The game places particular focus on the narratives of Edith's mother, Dawn, and Edith's great-grandmother, Edie. Edie, now in her 90s, has lived in the family home since she and her late husband built it 80 years ago. Over the years, she has lost her husband, 5 children, 2 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren within the home. Instead of turning away from this massive heartache, Edie preserves each room as a memorial to the person that lived inside it. She refuses to repurpose these rooms for new family members, and instead tacks on new rooms to the house whenever needed. As a result, the house takes on a haphazard, otherworldly appearance, as if it were a living organism. Dawn, on the other hand, deals with loss very differently than her mother. Dawn is terrified of her family's past and eager to conceal it from her children. Rather than discuss death with her children, she seals off the memorialized rooms and refuses to talk about their relatives. However, as Dawn finds out, and as many of us know, it is impossible to insulate loved ones from loss forever. Her attempt to avoid her family's story does not stop her from being shaped by it. Dawn's death leaves Edith to uncover her family's history and to navigate the pain associated with it entirely on her own.
Turns out, my mom was really good at keeping secrets. Now it was time to find out what my mom had been afraid of.
It seems irreconcilable to talk about living and dying at the same time. Yet What Remains of Edith Finch artfully demonstrates how we can celebrate life, no matter its length, while simultaneously acknowledging the end of an individual's physical being. Similarly, those who work in palliative care incorporate on a daily basis the notion that, until the moment each of us dies, we are alive. How we each choose to spend that time will be different, but honored all the same. Dr. Miller applauds society for, quote, finally welcoming an open discussion about death and dying in the face of a pandemic. However, after experiencing What Remains of Edith Finch, and reading its overwhelmingly positive reviews, all were written prior to the pandemic by the way, I wonder if the topic may not be as taboo as it once was. On the contrary, the existence of a game like What Remains of Edith Finch would make it seem there is a deeper hunger to explore existential questions than we realized. Perhaps we simply need to ask them. As a palliative medicine doctor myself, my sincere hope is that everyone who experiences this game is empowered to ask their loved ones about their stories and what it means to them to be alive.
There's so many things I wish I could ask my mom now. Part of me thinks this is what she wanted all along. For me to come back someday and find everything out for myself.